Beneath the veil of fog that floats over the ancient river, a silent shadow stalks the shallows. The Baryonyx, swift and sharp, moves through water like it belongs to both land and stream. Its long claw pierces the surface with purpose. Fish scatter. Silence returns. Deep in this forgotten land, one young explorer dares to go where others fear. Driven by stories and signs, he enters the marsh in search of truth. But truth in the wild has teeth. And as he steps closer to the unknown, he must decide if discovery is worth facing a creature lost to time. Elliot had always been drawn to the wild. While other boys spent afternoons staring at screens or playing games, he wandered the edges of the old village, listening to the whispers of trees and the soft splash of fish in the stream. His grandfather once told him stories of a beast with a crocodile's snout and a giant claw that fished from the river like a man. He called it the Baryonyx. Elliot never forgot that name. The village sat beside a vast stretch of marshland, thick with reeds, shallow pools, and a fog that never lifted. The locals called it the sleeping water. Most people avoided it. Some believed it was cursed. Others said it was simply too dangerous. Every now and then, fishermen would speak of missing nets or twisted metal hooks. Birds flew wide around the marsh and dogs barked wildly if dragged too close. Elliot was 15 when he first felt the pull to enter the marsh. He had read books about ancient creatures, studied their bones and names. But none fascinated him more than the Baryonyx. It was not as famous as the T-Rex or the Velociraptor, but it was strange, different. It hunted fish, lived near water, and had arms with claws longer than knives. Something about it felt real. That summer, his school project asked students to explore local myths. While others wrote about folk dances and village legends, Elliot packed his sketchbook, binoculars, and a compass. He told no one of his plan. He would go into the sleeping water and try to find proof. Not just of a myth, but of something that might still be alive. He set off early. The sun had not yet risen. Mist hung low over the fields and dew clung to the grass like silver dust. His boots sank into the soft ground as he crossed into the marsh. Trees grew twisted here, with roots that reached out like fingers. Birds were silent. Even the air felt heavier. Each step deeper made his heart pound harder. He followed animal trails, listened for movement, and marked his path with strips of cloth. After hours of walking, he reached a quiet stream. The water was dark, and fish darted just below the surface. He knelt, took out his sketchbook, and began to draw. Suddenly, a sharp splash echoed from behind the reeds. Elliot froze. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the water. Another splash. Bigger this time. Something heavy had entered the stream. He crouched low, careful not to make a sound. Through the reeds, he saw ripples spreading wide. Then came the shape, a long snout, narrow and scaled, gliding just above the water. It paused, then dipped, sending waves across the surface. For a moment, all was still. Then he saw it, the claw. Long, curved, and sharp. It rose from the water like a blade and struck downward. A fish flew into the air, caught mid-arc by powerful jaws. Elliot's breath caught in his throat. It was real. He pressed himself into the mud, heart racing. The creature stood half in water, half on shore. It was massive but moved with a strange grace. Its tail flicked with balance. Its snout dripped with blood. Its eyes scanned the water again, searching for the next catch. Elliot wanted to move, to run, to record what he saw. But something held him still. It was not just fear. It was awe. The Baryonyx turned slowly and stepped back into the mist. Within seconds, it was gone. Elliot stayed frozen for a long time. Only when the birds returned did he rise. He pulled out his notebook, hands shaking, and drew what he saw. He had come for a story. Now he carried a secret. Elliot returned to the village long after the sun had set. His clothes were soaked. Mud clung to his boots. But his eyes burned with excitement. He said nothing to his parents and went straight to his room. There, under the dim light of his desk lamp, he sketched the creature again. Every line mattered. The jaw. The claws. The ridge along its back. It had walked through the fog like it belonged to another time. The next day, he took his drawing to his grandfather, the only one who might believe him. His grandfather studied it in silence, running his fingers across the page. "I told you the Baryonyx was real," he whispered. "But I never saw it myself." "You did. You need to be careful now." "Why?" Elliot asked. "Because when you find something this rare, the world will either try to cage it or kill it." Elliot kept that warning close. Days passed. He visited the marsh twice more, always moving carefully, always alone. On his second trip, he found a trail of large footprints in the mud. The prints led to a sandbank beside the river. Beside them were broken fish bones, crushed and scattered. On the third visit, he heard the creature's low growl echo through the fog, but he saw nothing. He wrote everything down. Soon his sketchbook was full. He began to map the creature's path, where it hunted, where it rested. He realized it stayed close to the river but avoided the deeper marshes. It knew the land better than any human. One evening, he heard voices near the marsh's edge. Men with bright vests and loud boots were driving stakes into the ground. They were surveyors. He overheard them talking about a development project. A new road would cut through the edge of the sleeping water. Panic gripped Elliot. If the machines came, they would destroy the Baryonyx's home. Worse, they might find it, trap it, and haul it away like an animal in a cage. He had to act. Back at school, his teacher reviewed his project outline. "Interesting choice," she said. "But myths don't always make for strong research." "It's not a myth," Elliot replied. "What if I could prove it?" She smiled kindly. "Then you'd be famous." He didn't want fame. He wanted protection for the creature. That night, he searched online for someone who might listen. Scientists. Journalists. Naturalists. But who would believe a teenager with a notebook full of drawings? Then he found a name, Dr. Marin Silva, a paleontologist who had once spoken at a nearby university. She had written papers on the behavior of fish-eating dinosaurs. If anyone would take him seriously, it might be her. He sent an email, attaching scanned pages of his sketches, notes, and a message, "I think I've found something alive. Something prehistoric. Please don't tell anyone. I just want to protect it." He waited. 2 days later, she replied. Her message was short. "Where did you see this? I need to know more." Elliot told her everything. She asked for exact locations. He hesitated. She sensed his worry and promised she would keep the secret. Within a week, she arrived in the village. She was younger than he expected, with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She carried notebooks, camera gear, and a GPS. They met by the stream, where Elliot showed her the tracks, the bones, and the path along the river. "I believe you," she said quietly. "But if what you've seen is truly a living Baryonyx, then this is the most important discovery of the century. We must be careful." Together, they set up motion-activated cameras hidden in trees. Days passed. Then, one morning, Elliot woke to find a message from Dr. Silva. "We got something." He raced to the site. On the screen, the grainy footage showed a shape moving through the mist. The long jaw. The claw. The creature paused, looked at the camera, then vanished. It was blurry but clear enough. Dr. Silva stared at it for a long time. "We need to keep this quiet. If the wrong people find out, it won't survive." But secrets don't last forever. The surveyors returned. This time, they brought trucks and began clearing trees. The machines growled louder than any beast. The marsh trembled under their wheels. The Baryonyx was in danger. Elliot begged Dr. Silva to stop them. She made calls, filed reports, but the workers said they had permits. Progress, they said, would not wait for stories. Elliot made a choice. He snuck into the construction site and left behind a copy of one of his sketches taped to a tree. On it, he wrote, "This is real. Leave this land alone." The next day, the sketch was gone. But the machines didn't stop. That night, the marsh changed. Elliot and Dr. Silva returned to check the cameras. The paths were torn. The riverbank had collapsed. And then they saw it, fresh tracks, deeper than before, leading away from the water. "The Baryonyx is moving," Dr. Silva said. "Where?" "Somewhere it feels safe." But the forest was not safe anymore. And neither was the river. They followed the tracks deep into the marsh. The mist was thick. The air was quiet. Too quiet. They reached the old hollow tree, a place where Elliot had once seen the creature's reflection. The water was still. Then came a low growl. The Baryonyx stood across the clearing. It looked thinner, its scales darkened with mud. Its eyes locked on them, not with rage, but with confusion. It had been chased from its home. It didn't understand why. Elliot stepped forward, slowly, and raised his hand. "It's okay," he said. "We won't hurt you." Dr. Silva stood beside him, unmoving. Suddenly, behind them, a branch snapped. Voices. Flashlights. The surveyors had followed them. "Freeze," one of them yelled. "Step back." The Baryonyx hissed. Its body tensed. It turned toward the noise. The men shouted again. One raised something metal. "No!" Elliot screamed. The flashlight beams cut through the mist like knives. The construction crew, confused and afraid, stepped into the clearing. Their boots crunched twigs. Their radios crackled. One man lifted a tranquilizer rifle. Another had a net launcher slung over his shoulder. The Baryonyx let out a sharp, rasping cry. It was a sound of warning. Of fear. Its eyes darted from the unfamiliar shapes to Elliot, who stood frozen, torn between two worlds. Dr. Silva raised her hands. "Do not move. Back away slowly. Do not startle it." But the men were already shouting into their radios. Elliot stepped forward. "Please don't hurt it. It's not dangerous unless you make it feel cornered." The Baryonyx snapped its jaws and stomped. Its long claws dug into the ground. Its tail swept behind it. The animal was larger than Elliot remembered, more tense, more alert. Every muscle in its body said it was ready to strike or flee. One of the workers raised the rifle. "No!" Elliot yelled. He lunged forward and knocked the barrel downward. The man cursed. The gun fired into the mud. The Baryonyx shrieked and bounded backward, splashing into the marsh. Elliot turned to face the beast. "Go! Run! Get out of here!" The creature paused. Its long snout turned slightly. Its golden eye locked with Elliot's for a breath. Then it turned, splashed deeper into the water, and vanished into the reeds. Dr. Silva dropped to her knees, heart pounding. "You just saved it." But the workers weren't done. "You two are in serious trouble," one of them snapped. "You almost got someone killed." "No," Dr. Silva said firmly. "You almost got a living miracle killed. That animal is not a threat. You are." The supervisor pulled out his phone and started recording. "Tell it to the people funding this project. They're not stopping anything because of a story." Elliot's jaw clenched. "It's not a story. It's real. I've tracked it for weeks. I have recordings. Pictures. Proof." But proof was not always enough. The man waved him off and stomped away. That night, Elliot and Dr. Silva returned to her rented cottage. They reviewed the footage again and again. The videos showed the Baryonyx. The sound recorder picked up its calls. And Elliot's notebook had every detail mapped out. "We need to go public," Dr. Silva said. "Even if they ignore us, others won't." Elliot hesitated. "If we do that, it might draw more people. More danger." "Yes. But if we stay quiet, they'll bulldoze its home, and no one will stop them." Elliot nodded. The next morning, Dr. Silva sent everything, videos, sketches, analysis, to 2 trusted colleagues and a wildlife preservation group. Within days, the story broke. A local science blog picked it up. Then a national paper. Then it spread across the internet. The world saw it. A living dinosaur. Not in a lab, not a clone, but real. Hidden in the mist of sleeping water. The response was electric. Scientists demanded access. Hunters called it a hoax. Environmental groups flooded the area with petitions. The construction company paused work. For the first time, the marsh was quiet again. But silence was not safety. One night, Elliot received a call from Dr. Silva. Her voice trembled. "There's been a break-in. Someone stole the camera traps. Our site is compromised." The footage had been copied. A black market wildlife tracker posted clips online, claiming he could find the Baryonyx, for a price. The secret had turned into a hunt. Elliot ran to the marsh that night. Alone. Fog wrapped around him like a shroud. The trees loomed high and silent. He moved by memory, stepping over logs and through shallow pools. At the river's bend, he found tracks again. Fresh ones. The Baryonyx was still close. He followed the trail to the edge of an old pond. There, just across the water, stood the creature. Its body reflected in the rippling surface. It was breathing hard, tired, and thinner than before. Elliot didn't speak. He just watched. Suddenly, a red light flashed nearby. A drone buzzed through the trees. It hovered, scanning. The Baryonyx hissed and backed away. "No," Elliot whispered. "Not now." He picked up a rock and hurled it at the drone. It hit. Sparks flew. The drone spun and crashed. But it was too late. Shouts echoed in the distance. Flashlights bobbed between the trees. Elliot turned to the Baryonyx. "You have to leave. Go deeper. Find a place no one knows." It stared at him. Then, for the first time, it made a low, croaking sound, soft, almost like gratitude. It turned and disappeared into the mist. The men arrived minutes later. They saw only Elliot and a broken drone. "Where is it?" one demanded. "Gone," Elliot said. "Because of you." They left empty-handed. The next day, wildlife officials arrived with emergency orders. Access to the marsh was shut down. The government declared the area a protected habitat pending investigation. Journalists camped outside the village. But no one saw the Baryonyx again. Weeks passed. The mist returned to the marsh. The reeds grew tall. The sounds of machines faded. Dr. Silva left with a promise to return when it was safe. Elliot walked the river's edge one last time. No footprints. No bones. No roar. But he smiled. Some things were meant to be hidden. The world moved on to new headlines, new controversies, and new discoveries, but Sleeping Water Marsh remained silent. The government's protective order kept outsiders away, and barriers were placed around the region's key access points. Hunting was banned, construction was halted, and drones were strictly forbidden. To many, the mystery of the Baryonyx became folklore again. But for Elliot, it was never a myth. He visited the marsh often, sometimes alone, sometimes with Dr. Silva, when she returned with environmental experts. They did not track the Baryonyx. They did not leave bait. They only observed, hoping to preserve the quiet. The area was slowly being restored. The birds returned. Frogs chirped again. The fish repopulate streams that had once run murky with silt. Life crept back into places machines had scared away. But there was no sign of the creature. Elliot stood one evening beneath the same tall tree where he first spotted the dinosaur. The sun sank into the marsh, painting the water with red and gold. The breeze stirred reeds. Dragonflies darted across the surface. He closed his eyes and listened. In the distance, he heard something. A ripple. Then silence. Maybe it was a fish. Or maybe it wasn't. He had learned by now that nature gives no guarantees. Dr. Silva stood beside him. "You've done something rare," she said. "You gave something wild the chance to stay wild." Elliot nodded. "It never belonged to us. It was never ours to keep." They returned to the research station, now rebuilt as a quiet observation post, not a lab. Data collected here would guide policies, not attract tourists. One morning, while reviewing trail cam images set around the protected zone, far from where the original footage was taken, Elliot found something. A large, three-toed print in the mud. Half visible. Faint. But real. He did not celebrate. He only smiled. He didn't need to see the Baryonyx to know it was still out there. News continued to circulate. Most scientists debated whether the footage was authentic. Some said the Baryonyx must have been a hoax. Others believed it was a relic species, misidentified or misremembered. No one could find it again. No one except Elliot. He held on to the truth but didn't chase it anymore. He taught school children about the fossil history of dinosaurs, especially the Spinosaurids. He showed them how Baryonyx once lived in what is now England, how its claws were used to catch fish, how it walked on two legs and may have been semi-aquatic. But he never told them about sleeping water. Not yet. One afternoon, while showing a child how to make a plaster cast of a dinosaur footprint at a museum workshop, the boy looked up and asked, "Did you ever see a real dinosaur?" Elliot paused. Then he said, "I saw something that made me believe again." The boy smiled and ran off to tell his parents. That night, Elliot sat by his window and looked at the stars. He thought about the Baryonyx, its scales, its eyes, its roar. He remembered how it watched him, how it chose not to strike when it easily could have. In his mind, that creature had not just been a prehistoric predator. It had been a symbol of balance, of secrecy, of nature's strength to survive when everything else tried to push it away. The world wanted to capture it, to prove it, to profit from it. But Elliot had learned something greater. That some wonders are not meant to be owned. They are meant to be respected. He returned to the marsh a few more times over the years. Always alone. Always quiet. Once, he found a fish skeleton freshly torn apart beside the water. Another time, he heard a familiar call echo across the shallows. But he never saw it again. And that was enough. Elliot grew older. The world changed around him. New technology transformed exploration. Satellite scans, AI wildlife monitors, and global drone networks left little space for mystery. But the marsh remained untouched. Its protection became a case study in environmental ethics, cited in universities, praised by conservationists, and quietly supported by those who still believed in something wild and sacred. Elliot published a book, not about the Baryonyx directly, but about the importance of letting nature have its secrets. He titled it, "The Edge of the Shallows." The final chapter held a vague account of his encounter, no pictures, no bold claims, just the emotional truth of that moment, when time felt ancient and alive again. Some readers believed him. Others dismissed it as poetic license. He didn't mind either way. Dr. Silva retired and moved to a quiet town near the coast. She and Elliot still exchanged letters, real ones, not emails. They often wrote about what they had not said to anyone else. About what it meant to witness something the world was not ready for. About how rare it was to see something true and walk away from it. One of her last letters said, "The world is obsessed with discovery. But few are brave enough to leave things undiscovered." That line stayed with Elliot. He kept returning to the marsh every year on the same day, quietly, respectfully. He never brought cameras. He never left trash. He never disturbed the reeds. And each time, he listened. Sometimes, all he heard was wind. Other times, he thought he heard more. A splash. A low growl. The whisper of scales beneath still water. One spring, Elliot brought a young girl named Mira with him. She was his niece. Bright, curious, and patient. She had grown up hearing his stories and believed every word. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she stepped through the marsh path for the first time, clutching his hand. "Is this where it happened?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. They stood by the water as dragonflies danced in the sun. Frogs croaked in distant pools. The reeds swayed with the soft rhythm of the earth. Mira watched the surface. "Do you think we'll see it?" "I don't know," he said. But we'll wait. They sat together for hours. She asked questions about everything: trees, birds, fish, the color of moss on the rocks. Elliot answered each one. And with every answer, he felt something heal in him. Something he hadn't known needed healing. Because Mira didn't need proof. She only needed to believe. And that belief made the world beautiful again. As twilight came, the wind shifted. The reeds grew still. And in the far distance, there was a splash, too deep for a frog, too strong for a fish. Myra's hand tightened around his. She didn't speak. Neither did he. They listened as the water settled again. And then, silence. She turned to him. Was that it? He nodded. Maybe. And it was enough. That night, they walked back under a sky filled with stars. No photographs. No recordings. Only memory. Years later, when Elliot could no longer walk the marsh trails himself, Mira returned in his place. She followed the same path. Wore the same quiet patience. Sat in the same spot. And she listened. And just like him, she sometimes heard something in the water. The story of the Baryonyx was never published in newspapers. It never made the front page of scientific journals. It never became a viral video or a commercial exhibit. It remained a truth shared only by those willing to listen. Because some things do not belong in glass cases or screens. Some things belong to the earth and sky. To still waters. To silence. To those who respect them. And as long as the marsh remained untouched, as long as someone returned each year to remember, the Baryonyx lived on, not just in bones or books, but in the space between myth and memory. In the heart of a boy who once dared to look closer. And in the girl who believed him.